Hey, Jabber Jawn, tonight, on all those platforms and stations Nathan has told you about. I'm sure most of you remember Friday, May 8, 1970. Madison Square Garden. After suffering a serious thigh injury in Game 5 a few days prior, Willis Reed is forced to sit out Game 6 of the NBA Championship Series. The vaunted LA Lakers win Game 6, evening the series at 3 games apiece. The Madison Square Garden crowd, press, bookies, gamblers and children of all shapes and sizes find their seats awaiting to see if their beloved NY Knicks can somehow pull off one more victory to clinch the championship. The tension could be cut with a knife as Wilt Chamberlain had dominated the Game 6 victory, with Willis Reed having to miss the game due to his thigh injury. As the crowd awaits the beginning of the game, suddenly a gentle roar that turns into the thunder of the gods erupts throughout Madison Swusre Garden as their hero, Willis Reed exits the locker room with his jersey on. Come hell or high water, Willis Reed is not going to miss this game. His arrival on the court brought a fire to both the crowd and his teammates. Though not putting up major numbers that night, his presence brought the Knicks to life and they went on to defeat the Lakers 113-99. Well folks, tonight if you watch or listen to the show you will be involved in a similar historic moment as our hero, our Lex Park is back in the studio. Having to miss 3 weeks in a row due to a serious thigh injury, Lex is suited up in his tie-dye jumper and behind the control panels again. Steve, Nathan and I are pumped up ready to take on all challengers with the return of Lex. Whether you love Jabber Jawn or not, just as a fan of live chat shows, you should appreciate this moment and the excitement of Lex being in the room with us all again tonight. Let's hear that chant. The one we all love to hear. Lex. 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 Let's win this one for the fans.
Three little frogs sitting on a log. One of them fell in. One frog said to the other frog, well, you better go get her. Two little frogs sitting on a log. One of them fell in. Last little frog, he sat and thought, good thing they can swim. Jabber Jawn. Jabber Jawn. Jabber Jawn. Jabber Jawn. Three little frogs sitting on a log. One burst into a grin. One frog said to the other frog, wonder what's got into him. Two little frogs sitting on a log. One laughed until he is red. Last little frog, he sat and thought, must have been something I said. Jabber Jawn. Jabber Jawn. Jabber Jawn. Jabber Jawn.
In a good way, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Places everyone. I was just gonna run and check and make sure my hair was okay, but I didn't get to do that, so if it's not,
Yeah, looks better than he is.
sorry about that. I don't know. That's saying a lot. All right. Holy moly, I'm ready to rock then. Welcome to Jabber Jawn, everybody. I'm your host, Nathan Moore. This is Kyle Hogg, Steve Moore. I guess we're all co-hosts, and it's just good to be back with you again here on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitch, wherever you're watching. Welcome to the show. I do believe the chats are working again. Someone say something so I can be sure of that. Really missed y'all last week, not being able to see what y'all were saying. That was rough. But Dad has suggested a new format change. You want to introduce the new format idea?
Well, I thought as we get into the second season or sixth season, whatever it is,
Brand new season.
Episode 73, I gotta say. It's
73, I thought we ought to start thinking about a format.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about the old variety shows and how you always had a sequencing of different things at different times. And, you know, when Red Skelton showed and would come on, you had he would do a bit and then there'd be a skit. And
Right, a rhythm to it.
There was a rhythm, and I thought we could establish that rhythm. So my first reaction was that I think we should implement more of your musical ability. And the people like to hear your songs, and we like to, and you know, there's lots of room there to develop. So I thought, you know, we've gotten a format now. The format now is we have a leaving song, but I was suggesting that we start a format this evening, wherein we'll have we begin next time not with me running my mouth, but with you introducing the show.
An arriving song.
An arriving song. Well, I hadn't thought of it that way. I was thinking of a beginning song, but I like arriving song.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting settled, and then it'll give us something to talk about. Then we'll go from there, and we'll develop the format.
It gives me
like it.
it gives me more time to get settled as while you're doing it.
And I can finish my pipe, and you know.
Any other format suggestions before we?
Well, I wanted to kind of go around, and we could go from you to Kyle and let Kyle.
Man, you're putting a spot on everybody.
Yeah.
Well, now see, you can pass.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to accept the challenge, but I think a challenge is good for people in life, and especially if you can just say, I don't want to play. And you can do that anytime you want.
I do not accept this challenge.
So you have to come each week with a story.
You
to
know, I
tell.
actually had some notes for tonight.
Oh, look
so
at that!
Just
Now,
by,
I just love seeing notes.
Just by total chance, he told me. I was
Whenever
like,
you come in with your journal with some notes, or you come in with a piece of paper with some scratch on it, I know that we are gonna
we're in trouble
coast.
tonight.
This is just coasting.
So that's as far as I got. I thought I'd just throw that out, and then we'll get feedback and see how it goes. And
I like it. I also like the idea of a little trivia moment. Could be
Yep.
worked in, like a condensed version of the old OK Google it. Like 3 questions, first right answer in the chat gets the point, and that'll be fun.
All right, we
And
can.
Lex is ready for that.
Producer approved. We'll need.
Oh, you needed a Discord. I didn't get your extra iPad over there this
Pretending
time.
over here. It's cool. I'm just using my imagination.
You have it on your phone too, though, right?
Yes. But that's the thing right now.
Seeing
No.
y'all in the chat. It's so good to be back together.
now,
Welcome.
is your song supposed to set the mood? Like, if,
Yeah, that's a lot to ask.
I mean, if
isn't
you
it?
play something down, do we have to be down the whole night, or can we just jump right in with some upbeat story?
I don't exactly.
Well, his song didn't go along with what I had to talk about, so
Just ripping up this
that
piece of paper.
was a waste of time to put some scratch down on this piece of paper.
I've gotten back into some slide guitar lately, which is I years and years ago I dipped my toe in the deep end of it for a little while. I had a stint where I played a lot of slide, but a lot of what my nightly show is Monday through Friday at midnight Eastern time. I'm doing a show on YouTube called Daily Practice, and a lot of it is just about remembering how a lot of my old songs go. But then after I remember how they go in the first place and what the words are and everything, is trying to boil down the definitive version of it that I can play by myself, all acoustic, none of the bells and whistles of the loops and electric guitars and all the stuff I've tried over the years. This is just very simple, back to the roots of the song, and whether it's piano or guitar, just trying to discover the definitive version of the song, which is such a healthy process, and people are really engaging. All the people watching are becoming producers. They're all co-producers for this imaginary album that we're going to make out of these 300 and some odd songs. So for some songs, like
Now, is this an official bottleneck thing, or you just made
this is called a glass slide. And they make metal slides, ceramic slides, glass slides. I just got this one
specifically for that?
yesterday. But you know, some.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
How does that associate what you're doing there with that slide? That sound definitely takes me back to the blues.
Yeah.
And how does that relate? Was it practiced by blues players more?
Yeah,
before?
Robert Johnson being the most famous, which again I highly recommend the Netflix documentary that's new, "The Devil at the Crossroads." Robert Johnson story is fascinating, but yeah, I mean Robert Johnson's. I know a lot of people played slide before him, but he came out and just sort of made it mandatory, and a lot of you could make a case that there's a direct line from that to the more modern blues as we know it, and even rock and roll, like all came from that. But I don't know if, I mean, a more specific answer to your question, I don't know if you can not play blues with a slide. I'm sure there's some kind of, I mean, some of my songs that I've been doing with slide, maybe people would say that's not blues, but it sure sounds like it.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. All right, let's try this one. Here's one you know. But tell me this isn't the definitive version of this song. Let's see if it happens.
Do you have a bottle of whiskey somewhere, a moonshine or something?
You want it, right? You gotta love that. Trying to catch me a Jesus. Damn, that man is smooth. Trying to catch me a Jesus in this motel room. There's a Bible on the nightstand, shadows on the bathroom wall. I'm trying to catch me a Jesus, but he don't come when I call. Well, my mama's got her a Jesus, maybe I could just take hers. Mom's got her a Jesus, worn around her neck like pearls. My granddad's got him a Jesus, he caught his in the war. I'm trying to catch me a Jesus, like those that came before. I set a snare in the forest, I threw a net in the sea. Everywhere I go, I dig a little hole and cover it with sticks and leaves. I'm under covers now with a flashlight, trying not to breathe. I'm trying to catch me a Jesus, they say he can set me free. Caught him a Jesus at the end of a fishing pole. He had a long talk with that Jesus, decided to let him go. Now that Jesus gets a little bigger every time the story's told. I'm trying to catch me a Jesus, I want me a Jesus of my own. Yeah, I want me a Jesus of my own.
Wow. That's a original 1942 Alan Lomax recording right there. Recorded at a church.
That's excellent.
Wait till you hear it in a few months after I practice it.
Wow.
That's a great song.
That's a fun song.
Man.
That is great.
It's a good one for the slide
That's
guitar,
one of
too.
Dana's favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Hope you're watching, Dana.
She was watching when I wrote it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow.
Yep, in a motel room in Colon, Michigan.
Now, wait a minute. Let's be clear here. Dana was not in a motel room in Michigan.
Nope. She was watching the Hippie Fiasco live stream.
Exactly.
And we were in Colon, Michigan, which is the home of Abbott's Magic play. What's Abbott's famous magic store, one of the oldest, most famous magic stores in America.
Did you go?
What's that?
Did you go?
Oh, that's why we were there. They were having a convention, and Hippie Fiasco was doing our cross-country 24/7 live stream, only playing We're Invited, and we looked at the map and we're like, oh my gosh, Abbott's Magic is having a weekend convention. And Hippie Fiasco immediately put it on our map and went there and lived in Colon, Michigan for a weekend. That was a whole thing. We became little legends in that little town there for the weekend, because there was another magic store. I mean, I don't even know how much of the story to tell because my brain is flooding with memories right now. But I've known about Abbott's I had known about it for all my life, for years and years. In fact, our merch table had these little boxes and pencils and all these things where I'd take old Abbott's magazines and pull out and cut out magic ads and decoupage them to boxes and pencils. And we sold them on our merch table. So for a while, we were selling this, and we realized the source of these old magic magazines that I had been making boxes and pencils out of still existed, and they were having a convention while we were on the road. We were like, we got to go. So we went to this place, and we were doing this live stream 24/7, 24 hours a day. You could go to Ustream. This is before YouTube live streaming and everything, and watch us at any point in time during the day and see what we were up to. So we hit this town, Colon, Michigan, and went to Abbott's, this legendary store, and I started talking to the owner. I was like, do you mind being on our live stream? And so we interviewed him on the live stream. And then it turns out that this is a tiny town, way smaller than Stanton, and they had another magic store because it was sort of a famous Blackstone lived there. Like it was in the magic world. This is a legendary town. So there's this other store there, and I go in there and I start talking to him, and I start realizing, through my two interviews, start piecing together that there's a scandal going on in this town, because Percy Abbott, the Abbott's first name was Percy, which is another magical. It's all magic. But the other magic store was owned by offspring, by the family line of Percy Abbott. So I started to realize that there's a scandal going on here and a competitiveness between these two magic shops in this tiny town.
Wow.
So my inner Geraldo kicks in. I'm just like, oh my goodness, we're like back in the hotel room talking about it, piecing together, doing the math, like, okay, so this is a whole contentious situation. And we just start talking about it and going back for extra interviews and asking harder questions. So how do you feel about what's going on here? And And by the time, after like a couple of days, we're like rolling in with our live stream, and we're coming like towards the local diner there, and the lady like leans out of the window at the local diner and is like, "We're watching you right now." Like they see us coming, and like she like heads us off at the pass, and so like we became little local celebrities. Like everybody in the town was watching what we were doing in their town in real time. It was quite the thing.
Wow.
But wrote Trying to Catch Me a Jesus in that hotel room that weekend. And it all happened live on the live stream. You can just, I'm playing my ukulele. You can see me find the hook. And it was either me or Liz had actually taken a bath or something with a candle. And the candle made this thing on the wall that looked like Jesus. And that's where it all came from.
Wow.
There was like a shadow cast by the candle from the bath in there that looked like Jesus.
Wow. That's
Good
cool.
story.
Yeah, that's how it happens. That was a very condensed version of that story, but it's
And people, be aware, we look out for your reputations. Dana was not at the motel room in Michigan. Anything you tell us stays with us. We don't spread it on air.
So according to the new format, you're up.
Well, this sort of does tie into your song.
Oh, good. Well, of course it does.
I was driving home.
Magic is alive.
I was driving home from work, and I was listening to a John Cage interview from 1969. And John Cage was like a avant-garde. Now I can't think of the word.
Such an interesting dude.
Yeah.
Composer?
Composer, yeah.
What you have to say about him?
Well, just yeah, he just a lot of ideas, a lot of his music. He wrote it, never heard it. It was never performed, so he was writing stuff he was never hearing. And he told this story about when he got invited to University of Cincinnati. They were going to perform some of his music, and when he was there, these two students that the music teacher said, these guys are really smart. They want to talk to you and stuff. And their main thing they wanted to talk about is the school had like a certain amount of money where they could buy sheet music from different places. So they had bought this music from, and I get this was, back then there was no computer. Now you wanted the sheet music, you had to get it somewhere. So they had bought this sheet music from England. When it came, there was some notations that they had never seen before. So they didn't know what they meant. And they were so excited that they got to make up they had to decide what that was going to be, with just on their own, not knowing what it was. And so they were very, very excited about that. And so he tied that into, I don't know how he tied it in there, but when people used to, and it's about you too, how people learned about fish, they always knew like the Latin name for fish. There'd be a picture of a fish and you knew that was the fish. But he said, just imagine you don't know anything about fish and there's an aquarium. And you make up all the stories yourself. Like you have to name what type of fish is this. Or you might just name it Steve or Nathan or whatever. But how exciting it is to create your own world, sort of. Which is like finding your own Jesus, sort of. Mm-hmm. But then he went into, that reminded me of when we went to the baseball game. The main thing we talked about was that one part we didn't understand, where the ball went over the fence, you only got to go 2 bases. And it's like the things you don't understand or don't know about are like so often the things that really, we saw like a bunch of good plays, a bunch of good baseball, decent baseball. Nobody really talked about that. But when you see something you don't understand, it's like we all jumped on, what happened? What happened? The whole conversation was about how creating your own things and discovering stuff for yourself is so much better than just reading from a book and learning and everything. Which, when you were playing that about the way things you got, how to try to find your own, you want something that means something to you. It could be the Jesus, like he had a fish that was a Jesus. This was just about discovering things that mean a lot to you.
I love it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. John Cage.
Didn't he just have like a piece of music that he wrote that
it's in Belgium
to,
or Switzerland or somewhere that
right,
changes once every 50 years or something.
Yeah.
They raise the thing.
Like he wrote this piece of music that like if you write out a piece of music, you'll hit a note at the first bar or whatever, and the music tells you how long to hold that note. and so it'll be like 4 counts or 8 counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the next note, it's right there in the music. Well, the music he wrote, the first note was supposed to play for 50 years. And there's this somewhere in the world, there's some apparatus that is playing this piece of music that he composed, and recently it changed to the next note.
And crowds came.
So crowds came around for the next note in this piece of music.
Now does the next note last 50 years?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
You gotta love it.
But he used to write performances like we would go sit on the docks and there would just be 2 boats passing, and you would just listen to the sounds that it would make when they would pass like that, like just like weird, crazy.
So was he? What did he have to do with Velvet Underground? Is that somebody else? Is that a name I'm confusing, or was he?
He was just sort of in that weird type of thing. John Cale was was in.
I was confused then. He was in the Velvet Underground?
Yeah, John Cale was,
okay. So John Cage wasn't?
No.
But it just seems like he would be.
I
Names
know,
are so close, and he seems like Andy Warhol, the Andy Warhol of music or something.
And there was a performer, there was a guy named Merce Cunningham that he did things with, and he would make just a piece of music a certain amount of time, like it might be a minute or it was just, but he would tell Merce, all right, I'm giving you like 10 pieces of music. This one's 2 minutes, this one's 3 minutes, whatever, and you have to read whatever that you wrote in that amount of time. So it was these really cool recordings where some of them he's reading real slow, and some he doesn't time it right. So when he gets to the end, he's like, I got to finish it within the last 30 seconds. But it's really weird to listen to, a guy having to read his stories or his little, observations in a certain amount of time.
I love how sheet music was the original 45s, like back in the day, before there were records, before there was electricity or recorded music. Sheet music was the hot commodity, and it was as much of a for-profit business as 45s were. There was a whole music industry around sheet music, but I just love the whole fascination of a new piece of sheet music arrives in your life, and the town, if you have to have a musician that could read it and play it for you to know if you weren't that. But there were hits that hit the world just like on a 45 record back before electricity in the form of sheet music. And when a popular song came out, like that sheet music was hot. Like you had to get your hands on it, and it's just such a beautiful thing that you would receive this piece of paper that had this new song that was going to be remembered. We could all still hum today, but it was new and it was hot, and somebody had to play it on piano, and everybody would be like, "Oh my God, that's so good!" And just that whole world of sheet music is such a fascinating and beautiful thing. The secret code to unlock these melodies that have been invented.
Well, I was thinking about that when I was driving home too. When he was talking, I was like, let's say, I don't know if you know how to read music or not, but let's say you didn't, but you knew all these songs. Gave you sheet music, and you're an intelligent person. If somebody gave you sheet music in like 3 weeks or a month, could you sort of figure out what it was just by the way things were placed?
Very slowly, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's genius too, that even though you don't know the language, if you can speak it, you can sort of, figure out, well, this obviously must be this chord because it's going to flow like that. So, oh, that's cool.
And you probably, anybody, if you were locked on a desert island or something with a piece of sheet music and a piano, you could probably figure it out. You might not be playing the notes exactly right.
Right, but you know it sounded good.
You can tell by the spaces and the lines and those are notes, and this one's here and this one's here. So this one is higher. This one's higher than this one.
Right.
This one's lower than this one. And you can eventually you could probably figure it, especially if you had all you would need is the decoder, which is like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, a melody you already know, and the sheet music for it.
Okay. If
you were given the sheet music for a melody you already know, like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, you could decode the rest of all sheet music just from that. I never thought about that before, but that's different than any other language. You could figure it out from there.
Wow, that's cool.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think about those people who would get that sheet music. No one's heard the song the way it sounds, the way it goes, but that musician being able to open it and look at it and be like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? What is this? Like just some kind of amazing, piece of music.
Oh,
that
yeah.
they've never heard.
Yeah.
Like the scene in...
And then they put it down, they're trying to work it out, and like...
The scene in Amadeus where his rival like breaks into his room and is just looking at the
Right.
sheet music and just starts trembling. Like,
Because
oh my God.
he can hear it.
Yeah,
by
he
looking
hears
at
it immediately in
Yeah.
his head and is like, oh, it's just like...
Wow, that's
just...
great. I love it.
All right, you're up, Dad.
Well, I don't have any profound thing going on. I want to start with this. It's I was thinking about the ripple effect of how things work and how we sometimes oversimplify or often oversimplify. But I was thinking about an event that happened yesterday morning. I had come back from my walk. I've been walking really early, between 6 and 7, before it gets hot. So I did my walking and I sat down. I had my coffee and I sat on the porch for a while and welcomed the birds back and everything. But it's 7:02, which is pretty late. Yeah, it's daylight and people are getting ready to go to work and all that. Kyle just took a shit.
Yeah, I'm just getting ready to go to bed.
Yeah, you were just turning in.
Yeah.
And at 7:02, walking up Selma Boulevard was a yearling deer.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
wow.
A doe, and she was a young, I'd say she was a yearling.
A yearling is the name of just a young deer?
A young a
of any
deer, the
sex?
second after, the first year they have the spots,
Fawn.
so they're fawns. So the second year they're yearlings.
Oh, cool.
So he was little and wiry and arrogant. He walked up the street like he owned it. I saw one a couple weeks ago at 5 o'clock in the backyard, and as soon as he saw me, he disappeared. It was like a phantom. But this guy, he was just walking up the road, and he was heading
drunk?
towards somebody's.
He was just coming home from the bar.
Yeah, exactly. It was like Kyle coming home from Reno.
Night out.
Yeah, but that got me to thinking about the deer, and I've had numerous. Well, in other words, our garden has been ruined by the deer, and I think a lot of people in town have had the same experience. They're eating the hostas, and they're eating things they don't usually eat.
What was that word? Hostas?
Hostas is a plant, one of the plants. It's a perennial plant that people have. It's got those big leaves. You probably have some, but the deer love them. The deer go after them. But the deer this year are they've gotten in my garden. They've ruined the garden, and I've never had that problem to this
You
extent.
even have a little fence up, right?
We have a fence, and we're putting smell stuff around it, but I was watching that little guy. He could have just hopped over that fence like it was nothing. That little doe,
Right.
she could have done anything. So, but where I'm going is that the first reaction, I think a lot of people is that, boy, there's a whole lot more deer in town this year. And they think there's more deer. But I would argue that that's probably not really the case. There's not more deer. It's the drought.
Right.
The drought is doing it. So the deer that are living out in the outskirts of town on the county, there's nothing for them to eat because it's been so dry with the drought. So they have been forced to come where, if you take a drone and fly over Stanton, it looks green. Whereas all around it in the farmland, it's hard to be green.
Right.
And that's because people are watering their yards and taking care of their gardens. So that's where the food is. So the deer, it's not that there's more deer, although there might be, and that does happen.
But that's not the phenomenon.
But that's
that we're
not the
experiencing.
phenomenon we're dealing with right now. It's actually deer being driven into town by the drought.
Right.
And all that makes sense. And everybody say, yeah, you're right. But we never, my first reaction was there's just too many deer.
Right.
And so getting rid of the deer is not the answer.
Right.
You got to get some water in the plants out there, or they're going to keep coming in. Because deer don't really like being around people, because people are crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And deer know that, so they don't really like being around people. But if that's where the food is, you got to go.
Right.
You can't just sit out there and that brown stuff just doesn't taste good. But your garden was wonderful. So
That's a good example of a fallacy there. And then so often in life, and especially in a more macro sense, if you don't identify the problem correctly, because there's so many examples that you see where people are like, well, there's too many deer, and they just set out to remedying the problem. Right. and because they got the problem wrong in the first place, their solution is creating new problems and not addressing the actual problem, and all this mess
exactly
results from that.
It's a good, it's a good example of the first thing you would think about is not usually the real reason, or there lots of times there are more variables than you consider, than you want to consider or have considered.
One of my favorite examples of that kind of thing is there's a story they tell when they're talking about a fallacy like that, is that in World War II or I or something, all these planes were coming back, and they would see where all the bullet holes were, and they started reinforcing all the planes where the bullet holes were. And so we got to reinforce. Wherever they saw bullet holes, they were adding more metal and doing all this stuff, until someone stepped forth and like, well, you got to understand, these are the planes that made it back. So apparently they can get shot in these places and still return home.
Right.
What we need to figure out is where the ones that didn't come home were shot, and reinforce that part of the plane.
Very good. That's exactly right. I like that. That's a good one.
I thought you were going to say, they've already got the hole there. Let a bullet go right through it. Why are we replacing it? We just let it go through there again.
Right. That makes sense too.
Now, I have laughed at this story, which I don't know if I can't remember when he wrote it, earlier this week. Not everybody has the pleasure of reading his Facebook post, telling the story about the cat.
I highly recommend, by the way, friending. But I hope y'all don't mind me saying this, but if your Facebook experience is dull in any regard, I highly recommend friending either of these two wonderful writers, because they use Facebook the way God intended.
But tell the story about the cat.
Well,
That makes me
I
laugh.
might have missed this one.
Oh, it's hilarious.
well, I told it the same thing of the skunk. I had two incidents. My point was that I just live alone, and I don't have any friends or anything, and I just live with my birds. Yeah, and I just live with the birds, and I try to stay out of trouble, and I don't carry a gun anymore. And I'm really trying to behave and just not bother anything.
You're almost monk-like.
Really
at this
changing your
point.
ways.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
New leaf.
Exactly.
We should all get along now, right?
Well, I'm on parole, for one thing, and I'm trying to behave. And, I'm just trying to behave is what I'm trying to do. But I don't have much of a life of actual things happening. I read and think, but that's not really doing anything. But I had two incidents, and I put them on Facebook because nothing else happened. But one was the skunk incident. I went out in the dark, and I had to take the feeder down because the deer have been getting into it at night. So I got out in there, and it was dark, and I stepped, and I felt some movement, and I looked down at my feet, and it was pitch dark, but I saw this movement, and I realized that I saw a little white that I was standing right
That
beside
white.
a skunk.
That white.
That white gave him
Thank
away.
you, God, for putting that white
Yeah,
on
well,
that
he-
skunk. I tell you
Yeah,
what.
yeah, we were talking about that. He does that on purpose
Yeah.
because he doesn't want to spray you because he only has so many shots. And it's
Is
just a
that
lot.
true?
Oh yeah, they don't want to spray you.
But they only have so many shots?
Well, I
Does it
mean, if
reach-
they spray you, they're dead for a while. I mean, they can't keep spraying.
So they
They don't
over
have
time it builds
M16s.
back up again? Over time it
Yeah, they have to.
replenishes.
Yeah, they unload and then the body will build.
You know how
back
that is,
up.
Nathan. Come on, you know how that is.
We've all been there. You should take a. Well, let's don't even go there.
And remember, everybody, your reputations are clear with us, so you tell us anything.
All right, I've lost the train of thought.
Well,
the
so
skunk.
so you looked
Is that
down the
your
skunks
feet?
right
The
beside
skunk,
you.
and that really scared me.
I bet.
I got really. That's as close as I've ever been to a
Lost
skunk.
signal.
Uh-oh.
We still have audio, it looks like.
All right, keep telling the story. The camera overheated. Catherine was right. We should have put the fan on the camera. Boy, I tell you what. This climate change is no joke.
Well, the
It's
skunk.
even scarier in the
Yeah,
dark with no.
Keep talking, Dad.
Well, the skunk scared the hell out of me. That's what he did, and I backed off and apologized and got out, and he didn't bother me. He was irritated, but he didn't shoot me or anything. So I told that story, but the other story was that the next morning, when I went out to check on the birds, the first thing I saw when I opened up the door was the neighbor's cat laying there underneath the bird feeder trying to get some breakfast. Not really. He doesn't eat him. He just kills them for fun. He's a catch and release. He plays with them. He's a sadist. I do not like the cat. So I immediately screamed, "Ah, get out of here," as loud as I could, and opened the door, and I looked down, and in the road was the lady that walks her dog there every morning, and she was looking at me, and she didn't know what to do, and
Can you imagine?
I just turned around and went back inside, and I went back to bed. I went up and got under the covers.
Well, so go back more to that little moment where did y'all lock eyes?
Yeah.
Did you give
She
her a
was-
friendly shrug or?
She saw the cat, I think.
Oh.
I think she saw the cat running down through there because she had her dog, and it was partly her fault because her dog always stops and pees in my yard. So there she was just standing there watching her dog pee. So I think she saw. I don't think she, after the immediate sound, I think she put it all together pretty quick. That I didn't have a mean look at her. I felt really sad that I had created this false image because I am not that person unless you're a cat. But
It's just a good thing, like you didn't yell, "Oh, get out of here before I kill you!" And she's like,
well, I said, at least I didn't throw a baseball at it like I usually do. But yeah, I could have been arrested for assault there. But yeah, that was what he's referring to. It's just, and you live there.
Did she give you a look of acknowledgement that she?
No, she turned and walked down the road.
she turned and ran down the road.
She just
Screaming,
pretended-
dialing 911 or
she
something.
she was reaching for her phone, and I don't know what she was doing, but she got on out of there. And I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but I haven't seen her since. So
Now, is this the same woman that you disappeared down the side street one time and I lost you? Because one time you were coming down towards my porch and I was sitting there watching you.
no, that's
Oh,
no.
okay.
I know her.
Okay.
I can talk to her. But this one, just another lady that. I mean, there's several people that do it, so I'm not pointing anybody out.
Ah, get out of here! Get out of here! You
I'm
and your
only
damn
pointing out
dog.
my own embarrassment over the whole incident,
Mm-hmm. That's funny.
and I need to be more careful about how I behave. But I was trying to be alone, I thought I was
Right,
alone and a cat had attacked my world, and I didn't realize I was talking that loudly.
Now, when we were over there a couple of weeks ago, just sitting on the porch for half an hour, how many different birds did y'all see?
Boy, it's like a habitat there, sanctuary.
Well, it's okay if it's one thing, but what I'm getting now is that I'm being attacked by a flock of sparrows, and they attack that feeder and just nail it all day long. So now they're eating the whole thing of bird feed in one day.
That
But
doesn't
but
feel
it's
right.
not the birds I like. It's
Right.
not my chickadees and my titmice. It's those stupid English sparrows. So, but you never know what's out there. I have a rabbit that's coming. I see him every day. Chipmunk's still alive. I think he's
Yeah, I
still
saw
alive.
your cute little chipmunk in your garden.
Well, that's
when I was
Yeah,
over there
that's,
last.
I haven't seen him around the house. But I think he's eating in the garden.
No, what a sparrow is just black, right?
They're brown,
Brown.
dull brown.
And why don't you like them? They're just too aggressive.
Well, they're not from here. They're from England. They're
That's right.
I mean, we have our own set of sparrows. We have chipping sparrows. We have song sparrows.
Chipping sparrows?
Oh yeah, they're a wonderful little bird. And the song sparrows have a beautiful song. So there are good sparrows. But the English sparrows came over here and think they are God's gift to birds. And they think they run the place and they take over. English sparrows and starlings, I have no need
Is
for.
that? Would you say that's your least favorite bird that we have around here?
I'd say the starling is.
Starling.
Same reasoning.
Now, what's the starling look
It's
like?
the black stocky bird.
Does it have like a glimmer of purple in it?
It's got a lot of purple and the speckles. It can be a very pretty bird the way the sun can hit it. And they were brought over here, that Shakespeare thing, they were brought over here to Central Park because the English missed starlings. So in England, they're not.
Oh, wow.
But over here, they just, they're obnoxious and take over and knock birds out of their nests and take over their nests.
They're not the ones that fly in giant groups together, like in the crazy patterns and stuff.
That's
them?
they do that. Yes.
Well, that part's cool about them, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not the only birds that do that. They're not the. I think grackles are more famous, but starlings do it. Yeah. But they form large groups and take over areas.
I read a pretty touching thing the other day about pigeons, because pigeons get a lot of hate. A lot of people have contempt for them because they seem, they're the ones that if you're sitting in a city or something, they'll come up to you and steal your food and stuff like that. But they're like, look, you got to remember that pigeons were domesticated hundreds of years ago, and that we used them to send messages to each other, and that basically for hundreds of years we domesticated the pigeon and made it our companion and our useful tool, and everybody had their pigeons or whatever. And then when modern technology came along, they were all displaced and discarded and thrown away, and now they're just out there. The only way they know to survive is by their relationship to us. And then, so they're coming up to us when we're sitting on park benches, and people think of them as like rats or like a nuisance or something like that. But really, they're almost like a dog or something.
Yeah.
We should remember in our hearts that we made this happen. It was we made them our companions and then discarded them, and that's the energy that we're feeling now when they come up to us.
I just read something about cat people and dog people. How people say dogs are just too subservient. They just don't, cats are have an attitude and stuff. And somebody said, well, you have to understand, dogs are the only animal that's been smart enough to, basically brought themselves to us. Like, we didn't we did domesticate them, but it was because they wanted to. Like, man, y'all got it good down there. Like, they're the only animals that's smart enough to say, hey, I'm going to come live with you because I get fed all the time.
Right, that was like the early days.
Yeah.
There were certain wolves or foxes or whatever that would come close to the tribes and just start living closer and closer, living off the scraps and stuff. It's so cool. I love the dogs and horses. Just just our companion animal. The horse is such a good one. I mean, the human civilization just wouldn't have happened at the same rate or pace or in any way without our relationship with the horse. And it's just so fascinating to me. When you look at a horse, it's almost like divinely our companion.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to. I mean, I know that if I saw them in the wild, maybe I would. It's just so hard to think of them as. I feel that way about barnyard animals too, though. Like it's so funny to me because it's so hard to picture them in the wild.
Right.
Like if you get a play set of a barnyard and all those animals, the chicken and the cow and the pig or whatever, like they all just seem like they were in the Garden of Eden. There was a barn, and that's where God made them. I guess that's just the result of being domesticated for 1,000 years. Like they just start to look like completely different than a wild animal.
And so I'm a very emotional, crying type person all the time.
No.
But I was going to the Green Valley Book Fair last weekend, and I don't know if you've been there, but when you turn in, there's like you have to go up this hill, and there's usually some farm animals around. And right on the top of the hill was a cow all by itself, just like displayed on the top of this hill with the sun behind it. It was so beautiful. I was driving up there and just started crying. Like, look how beautiful this is. This stupid cow just standing at the top of the hill looking at me. I was like, man, what could be any more prettier than that right there? Just,
Was it a pretty cow?
Yeah, it was just.
Or just a cow?
It was just peaceful.
It was a
They just had that
peaceful
peaceful
scene.
feeling. I was just having a peaceful day going out to buy some books, and he was like, come on into the farm, They got books in here.
So they still, have you been to that? And they still do the Green Valley Book Fair. Huh?
Yeah.
Is
it's
that
amazing.
like year round at this
It's
point?
year
or-
round now, yeah. Every day except Sunday.
Interesting. I remember
Every
when
day?
that was like a big event in my childhood.
Oh, it
You
used
would
to be,
get all
yeah, when he was,
excited,
like, what?
go load up,
Oh, God, yeah.
come back with a trunk full of books.
I couldn't go very often because I'd spend too much money. I'd spend $100
Yeah,
there
it's
easy.
crazy,
It was
yeah.
Very cool. What'd you get?
What did the best thing I got was I've always wanted to read Ulysses, but I always get it in like paperback size, and it's just so compact, and the words are so, it's like, man, you really gotta grab hold of this book and read it. And they had like a real big volume of it, like almost like you opened it up, it was like a big soft bed, like, oh, I can actually read this and relax now. That, I gotta get into it, like fight each page. Stay open so I can keep reading you. It was like, oh my God, look at this. I can read it and relax. It was that made me very happy that I found
Is that
one
a
that
poem?
big. Ulysses is James Joyce, just like this long wandering.
I never read that.
Yeah, it's just.
I'm thinking of Odysseus or something. Ulysses.
Yeah.
Is it like a myth?
Well, it's a modern day thing, but it's written in a way that's just like people will spend like their lifetimes trying to get through it because it's just so densely packed with information or just the story of everything. But so just to have one where I could like.
What's the basic gist?
I've started reading it maybe a couple of times. I don't even know. I usually tackle it when I'm drunk. I'm like, God, I'm gonna finally read this book, and then I wake up, and the next morning it's like open on my lap. I'm like, so to find one that I could tackle sober was such a good feeling.
Have you ever read that?
I have tried.
Wow. This is a challenge.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
it's
All right, book
definitely-
club. Let's start a book club.
It's a-
Ulysses first.
it's like a really smart person took every world in the universe and just shook them into a book and said, all right, figure out what this is. But it's written beautifully, but it's just, you got to think about like every page. Maybe that was what was better. In the small, compact version, my brain just can't handle it. This big version, like less information per page.
Was he trying to be like that? Was he trying? What do you think he was trying? Was he just divinely, and was his hand trembling as God moved through his pen, or was he like trying to be
God got bored and left.
Even God couldn't finish that.
Too long, didn't read.
Too long, didn't read.
Like I've been
Get
to,
over yourself.
I've been to lectures and stuff where they try to like, tell you like what his inspiration was and what he was trying to do. Man, I was probably drunk when I went to those too. 'Cause I can't remember what they said. But he just had this vision and had to like get it down, you know. But it's not like a linear, you know. It's the story of a guy, but it's not like a, you know, at the end of the chapter he's not going to sleep, going to wake up the next morning.
Set in when and where?
What was it? When was it written? Like the 40s?
No, like, it was contemporary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey Siri. What is James Joyce's Ulysses about? Ulysses chronicles the appointments and encounters of the itinerant Leopold Bloom in Dublin in the course of an ordinary day, 16th of June, 1904. The whole thing takes place in one day.
Yeah, and it's basically like everything, like just trying to, it's like noticing every detail in a day and writing it down. So it can get really into, you know,
like the minutia.
Yeah, just, you know, it's just, you know, like he just had the patience to spread 24 hours out and just, you know, get it all in there. It is a challenge to read, but people that I know one person, well, I've read other people write, I've written about reading it all. But I know one friend that read it and he said it's almost like you've conquered something when you get it, you know, when you finish it. like, damn it, I did it! Throw it on
CrossFit.
you throw it at a sparrow. Take this back to England with you.
At a cat. So you said that morning that you were that something happened over coffee. What's your coffee these days?
What do I do? I do 1 cup of coffee. It gets my stomach going, so I got to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
I drink Folgers instant coffee.
Oh wow!
1 sweet and low, and
any cream?
And I use the vanilla low sugar creamer, the French vanilla, and that gives it that little extra shot.
Did you ever make coffee in your life?
Yeah.
And you switched at some point?
Yeah, I wasn't that good at it, and I did what everybody did at different times.
Like a drip?
Yeah.
Coffee maker or whatever?
Right, the old-fashioned one. I tried all that.
Percolator.
Yeah, I've gone through everything. French press. How do you do coffee in the morning? You don't do coffee at all? No.
I'm the same way. My stomach gets all messed up if I drink. If I'm gonna be at home alone, I remember one time me and my wife we were walking where we used to live in New Jersey. We were walking. I was like, I gotta go home. She's like, why? Is I about to shit my pants? I had to run like 4 blocks to get
because
home.
Because you had coffee. That's why I like. I mean, it's one of the many reasons I like it.
But coffee amazes me. I'm sure you remember. I used to, when I would go out with my grandmother and my mom, we'd go like to get dinner somewhere downtown or something. They could sit there for 50 cents, drink coffee all day, just free refills. As much as like coffee was like less valuable than water. Like, give us 50 cents, we'll give you as much as you want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, now
it's
so China. But I really don't want it. But go ahead and fill the cup up just so I have a full. Man, and now it's like what, God, $multi to get a cup of coffee.
I got coffee in here right now. I drink coffee all day till I switch to.
What do you think?
So how do you make it?
So
we have a fancy machine.
But is it the coffee? Is it the caffeine? What's going on?
Well, I guess it's the caffeine for sure. A little perk to wake up. I like the effect on my bowels. And it's all just the ritual of it all. I guess the smell of it.
That's the beauty of it, the ritual, I think. I do. My wife used to drink it. It was just to smell it in the morning and see how much she enjoyed it. It just got her going. That was a beautiful thing to see.
But
Yeah,
it's
I like to have one cup, and it tastes good, and I've got it figured out. But I seldom ever want any more the rest of the day, which is, I think, unusual for most coffee drinkers.
I used to, when I was a tea drinker, I would always drink coffee until I switched to my tea. The tea couldn't happen until I ate something, because it would hurt my stomach in a way that I didn't like. Like, this doesn't hurt me, but it does facilitate motion, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh,
But tea, if I drank iced tea on an empty stomach, it would just be like a sharp pain.
wow. Because I drink hot tea all day.
Regularly.
And don't
Oh,
have
you
it.
drink hot tea all
Yeah, that's because when
I've
I
never gotten into
when I go to
hot
work,
tea.
everybody's like,
You
"You're the
drink
one here
hot
drink-"
tea?
Yeah,
So you do the caffeine.
yeah.
You just get it in a different
It's
way.
just the coffee.
You make it? A little tea bag?
Oh, I buy it.
Oh, you buy it? Where do you buy it?
Well, it's just like the grocery store. You buy a bag of tea. And
Oh, that's what I
go to work. Yeah, and they have a hot water thing. You put it in there.
What do
But
you put in that?
a friend of mine, when I lived in New Jersey, there was this place. There was this place, Brutalities, they were called, and all their teas were named after heavy metal bands, and they were all like
Brutalities.
like Smoke on a Watermelon, or you know, like there was all like, you know, Deep Purple. They all had like heavy metal things, and that comes you gotta you gotta put it in the little tea metal thing. And
Right.
I feel all fancy.
I
When
love
do
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The accoutrements. I love things that have paraphernalia that go
Right.
along with it, little devices.
But the tea's the same thing. People are like, why don't you just put it in there and microwave it? I have the kettle. That's the beauty of the routine. I know I've got a couple minutes while the kettle heats up, and I have the cup out and the tea in there. It really is just like a relaxing routine, sort of.
I think the whole British tea thing is neat. I don't have any experience except from movies. There's just something cool about it. It's such a community thing, or what? Like, if someone comes over and you don't offer them tea, there's something wrong with you.
I've got the pot on the kettle on the thing. Now, have you ever been a person that after dinner you order tea while you sit there? I mean, order coffee like the end of the evening.
Not regularly, but I will if I feel I'm sluggish from the meal, and I like the company.
Okay.
And I want to stay in the conversation. I want to be a player and whatever.
But you don't have to rush to the bathroom and then come back.
No.
Now what are y'all talking about?
How does your coffee drinking relate to your alcohol intake? Do you do both?
That are you referring to like the classic cup of coffee to sober up or kind of thing?
No, I'm thinking about when your evening turns, from the daytime when you're drinking your coffee and then you start partying. And I mean, do you drink and drink coffee at the same time, or do you usually?
No, my coffee is relegated to the first half of my day, and it's been a long time since I've day drank, even as a night owl. It's the math still correlates or whatever. Even though my morning starts at 3 in the afternoon, it's still my morning, and so day drinking would be drinking any time within 5 hours of that rising. It's been a long time since I've done that.
No, at night when if I know I need to go to sleep and I'm just not feeling it, I'll make a big cup of black tea with a lot of cream in it. That's the time my body shuts down, sort of.
I'll have to come over for tea sometimes.
But I don't know if it's the
intrigued.
tea or if it's like I said, the ritual. Like, oh, I'm gonna get ready for sleep. I've got to go to bed. It's the whole thing of getting it ready.
Do you do like what's the kind of tea you take? Sleepy time?
I used to love that. When I was doing bold print, I used to talk about God, what's the name of the company that does it? Red Zinger and Sleepy Time. God, what's the name of that
Oh
company?
yeah, Celestial Seasons.
Yeah, I used to talk about Celestial Seasons so much that people said I should try to get a sponsorship from
For
them.
Bold Print.
Yeah, because there used to be this thing called Poets Market, and like there was like a book where writers and poets could send their stuff, and one of my magazine was in there, my fanzine was in there, and I wrote this long thing about Celestial Seasoning. Like, you're advertising everything you're in there, you should get them to give you a couple of dollars. You mention them, because I used to love Red Zinger back then. That was
Oh,
my
yeah.
drink, man.
That was a whole thing.
Yeah.
We were all into that. Even got us all to try tea, even if you never had before. All right, here's a trivia question. What was, on Star Trek Next Generation, what was Captain Picard's tea of choice?
Wow.
First right answer in the chat gets a point.
Old English breakfast tea? I don't know.
You can guess.
Earl Grey.
Yes.
God,
Ding,
there
ding,
you
ding,
go.
we have a
I was
winner.
trying to think of something
Earl
English.
Grey.
I said, what did I say? I said old English
English,
breakfast
yeah.
breakfast tea. Earl Grey.
All right, types of tea. We'll go around the circle until no one can name a type of tea.
I'm not a tea person. Lipton.
That's
No,
a brand.
no,
but
no,
that
no.
works.
Now, how about like chai? Do you like that?
Oh, chai. Yeah. I haven't had that in a long time.
We were using
What
all
the heck
the
is up with
circle
that?
words.
There's a couple of good places downtown that make good
What
chai
makes
tea.
chai chai? What's the spice?
I don't know it, man. It's my blood sugar when I drink it skyrockets,
Oh,
so I
it's-
don't know but it is so good. Oh.
Mhm.
There's at the farmers market. There's a guy down there that makes like the best chai tea. Oh man, it's like, whew. I've waited in line like 10 minutes to get a cup of that sometimes.
Mhm. I only had one answer, and I don't even know what it is. But if it came to me, I was going to say oolong.
Oh wow.
What is that? You've heard of that, right? You're
I
a
have
tea
heard of
drinker.
it, but I don't.
I've heard it on the crossword puzzle. That's
Oolong?
about it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like your neighbor.
All right. Oolong Thai.
But she's got some good tea up her.
Karina says loose leaf teas are the yummiest.
Yeah.
Oh, Kethra in here with Darjeeling.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
Darjeeling Express.
I know Lemon Lift. is
Lemon Lift.
It's another Celestial Seasonings banger. It's popular at my house.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's something about coffee is like get things done. Let's get going. Get the day started. Tea is more like to me in my mind, like, you know, just let's sit back and
It's like
chat.
drinking
and-
peace.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Drinking peace.
Oh. So the caffeine in it doesn't bother you. You drink it at night before bed.
Yeah. I mean, and soda doesn't bother me, but man, I have a cup of coffee and man, if I'm not in the bathroom within 10 minutes, I'm in bad shape.
What is caffeine?
It's just a central nervous system stimulant.
Now, is caffeine something they put in the coffee or it's already in there?
Caffeine is part of the coffee
So it's
It's in the bean.
and part of the tea.
yeah.
So explain that.
Well, it's just caffeine's a chemical that those plants are making, and why they're making it, I'm not sure. But
That's the question.
That's-
right? Or
that's-
a question.
you know, that's what got them famous. That's why tea and coffee were part of the reason why the British conquered South America and North America, so they could get to tea and coffee were two of the things that they were after.
Now
So
you don't
it's
have
just-
to. Oh, go ahead.
No, just drilling down a little bit, and that it's a chemical that's produced by these plants, and it's just that kind of stuff blows my mind
yeah.
because they're also delicious. They have a very particular, favorable to us flavor. I wonder if like caffeine is produced by non-delicious plants, or can it be found in all kinds of
I don't know.
places, or
It's a good question. I don't know if other plants have it, but we don't eat them. or if we would eat them if we knew they had them. I don't know all that.
So chemicals are not, the periodic table is elements, right?
Right.
And chemicals are not elements.
Chemicals are the combination of elements and the different relationships where the atoms of different elements combine to form what are called compounds.
So
So caffeine is a compound
of
made up of probably just carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It's how they're arranged that make the chemicals. That's the whole field of organic chemistry, is the field of study of carbon compounds, because of their ability to form so many different patterns.
So you just mentioned carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen?
Oxygen.
Oxygen.
But there's nitrogen too, not as much.
So
It's carbon, hydrogen, or oxygen are the three main players. But you also have like hemoglobin, which has iron in it that we use to capture the oxygen. And then you have, different chemicals like nitrogen. Proteins have different chemicals.
Now, what about these chemicals like caffeine or nicotine? What makes it addictive to you? Like what gets in you that you just crave it?
It just fits into some pattern in your brain. It mimics a neurochemical, probably in the same shape like a jigsaw pattern. It fits in and unlocks the serotonin pathway, and so you get a false image. That's what a lot of the drugs do, give you a false message that you're happy, serotonin and inhibitors and all those different things. But most of those chemicals work to mimic something that your body is using naturally. So
it's just so your body gets used to an increased amount of something that it has naturally. So when you take it away, the body itself has reestablished itself to operate under that heightened amount of that.
And that's where sometimes your body will react, and when it doesn't have it anymore, it reacts negatively. And
because there's physical withdrawals and then there's psychological dependence.
Right.
Which are two.
Exactly.
But it's interesting that the body would go through actual physical withdrawals.
Well, the chemicals are sending messages to the body, so the body reacts to those messages.
Now, does alcohol have a chemical like that, or alcohol is just alcohol, like nicotine, caffeine, and alcohol?
Alcohol is ethanol. It's the simplest of all the dangerous molecules out there. It's the simplest.
Oh, wow.
It's just two carbons and an OH attached to one of them.
Which is fascinating, because if you think about beer and spirits and wine, which are three multiple different ways to create alcohol out of wheat or grapes or...
Yeah, it's just fermentation. It's just a chemical process that different chemicals plants and animals do. The yeast does it, and that's what the fermentation process takes the sugar and breaks it down into ethanol. And then if you don't watch it, it'll keep going and turn it into acetic acid. That's what happened to my hard cider one year.
Oh, you gotta watch that.
I bought some hard cider and put it in my freshman year in college. I had a big old jug of hard cider. I was so happy. I put it away, came back next week, and I had a perfectly nice thing of apple cider vinegar. It was wonderful. I was so pissed.
I bet.
I've never been so drunk.
That was a chemistry lesson I didn't want to learn.
So that acid thing that you said that sounds dangerous.
Well, it's vinegar.
Oh, it's just vinegar.
It's a weak acid.
Is there, like, we around here, we still live in an area of the United States of America they call the South, and there's still
They call the South.
there's still moonshine happening, not like it used to back in the day. It was probably a little bit more prominent when you were younger, but still from time to time, moonshine gets pulled out at a party or something, and it's a pretty wonderful thing when it happens, especially a good batch. But is there stories or dangers of?
Well, of course there are. It's just
Did you
like
ever
anything
hear-
else. You don't know what you're drinking till after you drink it.
Right. Do you have any stories about that? A bad batch of moonshine that ever?
No, I never did much of that. I
Yeah,
did,
but you did some of that.
I have taken a sip or two, but I never dealt with a moonshiner. I never did it. I watched Andy and Mayberry.
Get in the car, Nathan. We're going to deal with some moonshine.
Otis is about.
I think I got a little jar in the freezer right there. You want a little sip of it?
I would love a sip of
You
it.
would?
Hey, wait a minute. He's driving me home.
Oh, that's true.
I'm just going to take a sip. Light me up a joint,
Officer.
somebody. We're going to have some moonshine.
Yeah, I was just gonna take a sip, officer. I swear.
I don't know.
But I feel like 9 out of 10 times, I have no idea where this came from. And I feel like that's the story with most moonshine.
But you tasted. You didn't go blind, right?
Are we
No,
supposed some
Kyle,
way
I
to
didn't.
te-
Here, take it.
So, Steve, this might be a longer answer than what we want, but
What
or-
flavor is this?
But what is like? How could you test to see what that's made of? How complex of a process is that to know what has gone into that to make it?
I have no idea.
How many different things? Like, how bad could that be for you?
Methanol can also be produced by this type of process.
There's a guitar pick in there.
Ethanol has 2 carbons.
Oh my gosh!
Sorry, there's a pink guitar pick.
Okay, so
I thought it
this
was a cherry or
this
something.
type turns to plastic.
Apparently, this kind produces guitar picks.
In other words, if you made methanol instead of ethanol, that's with 1 carbon instead of 2,
What's the
and
flavor
3
is it?
ounces will
straight up.
blind you. It'll destroy your optic nerve.
That's what I
See,
hear.
so-
blind
And you
you.
hear about people drinking moonshine and be like, "Man, I was blind last night."
Yeah,
Yeah, you were.
literally.
I think I told this story earlier. My dad used to buy it all the
You
time.
can smell it from there.
It smells like a hospital.
I bet I could light a match and go
I know. Yeah.
and like breathe fire.
But I remember my dad used to buy moonshine. He would come home and pour it on the porch, and he would light it. And by the color of the flame was if he would drink it or not. It was. I don't know if he
There
knew what he
you
was.
go.
I don't
Is
know if
that
he
what
knew
you're-
what he was
that-
doing.
that's
I've
But
what-
never heard that, but that's possible
No, there's
because
a
it could burn with a different color flame.
Should we try to light a cap full of
man,
it?
that's good.
Isn't that amazing?
Let's see what you got here.
Wow, that is really good. It's so ice cold.
Producer.
Yeah, they can make it so smooth.
But I've never. It's just always so fun. The last great story I remember was at when
Who turned off the light?
when Surprising Mr. Davis played at that Virginia festival. It was right after COVID because people were still having to get tested and stuff. And Surprising Mr. Davis opened for Joe Russo's Almost Dead at this Locken. Yeah, that was the name of the festival at Locken here in Virginia. And one of the nights it got this terrible torrential downpour of rain shut down the festival. So all of us musicians were hanging out backstage and drinking some beers, a little whiskey and stuff, singing songs, telling stories and stuff. And then someone shows up with a jar of moonshine. I tell you what, that was a game changer right there. About an hour later, there weren't rafters, but we were swinging from them. And we were just singing at the top of our lungs. And it was just such an injection of energy into the entire scene. It just rewrote the script on the entire evening. And it was so fun.
Man, that's smooth.
But
That's-
I've
that was
never
good.
known anybody that made it. It's always just so mysterious. I don't remember where I got this, but you've had friends that would have a source or something, right? Like,
Well, I mean, the source is always a secret because it's
always a secret.
illegal.
yeah, it seems
It's a
so
federal.
mysterious.
It's a federal crime.
Oh, am I in trouble now? Like,
Probably wait.
No, not unless you got a still down here.
But is owning it bad?
No.
Should I chug this?
Get rid of it, Nathan, quick.
No,
And now they're going to do the closing song.
Not if you want to drink your coffee tomorrow.
I remember, maybe it was a beluga or something, but Danceberry shine.
Oh yeah.
That made it into a song or two of mine. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's just,
that was
Danceberry.
yeah, tell me what berry I'm trying to say, because I always wondered if I was saying it right. Dancem?
Damson.
Damson.
That sounds right. It's a fruit that grows on a tree around here,
Mm.
Oh, yeah, that'll ferment then.
but it's sweet and
Mhm.
it was a smooth. Yeah.
Well, you always well, you don't
Isn't that
always
magic?
hear, but oh, it's so good. But I read stories of guys in prison will get like a banana and some bread and soak it with some water, and they can make liquor out of. You know, I'm not sure what all they put in it, but like, man, that's some. You really. It must be easy. I mean, I'm sure that's not good, but
Is it sugars in the plant? Is
It's
that,
sugar that's being fermented. So,
and fermented just means rotting, or
well, no, it's got a. That's
Breaking
where your
down.
yeast comes in.
tell me more about that.
Well, they do a chemical reaction. The yeast eats the sugar, and the
What's
byproduct,
yeast?
and that's its energy, and it's byproduct from breaking down the sugar and getting the energy is ethanol.
Ah.
So it's
So you make it sound like yeast is alive.
yeah, they are.
They are?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a living thing?
Yeah, they're a living thing.
So you
You buy yeast in the store, they're in a spore when you buy them, but when you put them in water and the right temperature and food, they come alive and start eating. And the eating's where that fermentation chemistry takes place.
that's
no,
pretty amazing.
this might be the same question why people are buried 6 feet deep. But why is moonshine illegal? Of
Well,
all
it
the
all
stuff,
goes-
because it's dangerous.
like all the stuff we drink.
Because a bad batch could kill you.
Well,
So
and
why don't they have
it all
some-
goes back to the 20s when we had prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the moonshine and everything really took off. That's when it became big business, and they were taking barrels of it to Chicago, and that's when these big stills started coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, it was just everybody'd have a still, you know.
But so why'd they legalize everything except for moonshine?
Yeah, you can home brew, but you can't moonshine.
Too powerful.
Well, it's
Yeah.
just yeah.
It's like
Again,
the same reason you can't own a machine gun. or
it's
something.
like you can make beer and wine. That's 6%, but moonshine's 50 proof. You know, it's 100. It's 100 proof. It's 50%. Well, it's whatever proof is the most you can have.
Mhm.
Now, what's the
Ni-
thing
90.
from England that we can't have here? Maybe we can now. Absinthe. Or
Oh,
whatever.
absinthe.
Yeah. No, what is that? I've never had that.
I don't know.
They
either.
poured over the sugar cube.
Yeah.
They had special talk about cool paraphernalia. The absinthe paraphernalia, the thing that goes over
I
the
don't-
glass that you put the sugar cube on.
Have you
pour
ever
the-
had any of it?
No.
I haven't either.
I don't know.
I've seen it in
anything.
movies,
I'll have
though.
to do research on that.
Apparently, it has psychedelic properties.
Now, can we buy
Probably
it here in America
Try
now?
that on the show.
I feel like the version they sell in America is not. Anybody that knows what they're talking about would be like, that's not actually absinthe.
In America, it's called Fireball. Or how about what's not fire? What's the terrible stuff that tastes that's thick?
I feel like there's so
God,
many
I've done-
poets that
I've
like
done-
went mad with absinthe.
What is
like
this stuff?
Rimbaud or something.
What is this stuff? God, now I've drank so much of it, I can't remember what it's called. At the very end of the night, when everybody's doing shots and everybody orders a shot of
Jaeger?
Jaeger, yeah.
Oh yeah, what the hell is that?
Yeah. No, what's Jaeger?
I don't know.
That's like everything combined is scooped out of the toilet
I
and
mean,
served
it's
to you.
made in active ingredient would be ethanol, but I don't know what else it's got, and I don't know how
it's got some
made.
bad decisions mixed in.
Yeah.
And I remember you always
One
know.
ounce of regret,
You,
two squirts of tears.
but that's the thing. Always when you go to the bathroom and come back and you see everybody's got a shot of Jaeger lined up, you're like, oh hell, you know, this is
It'll be
Someone
rough.
take my keys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Jaeger.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
We did it.
Yep.
It's already that
Really?
time.
Is that
That's
right?
ridiculous.
Sitting around here taking shots.
We just still haven't talked about the ball game.
Oh no, well we did a little
A little
bit, but
bit.
yeah. That's so funny. Our last week's show, the night before, the three of us went to a Stanton Braves baseball game, and then for the show, I took a picture that was taken of us at the baseball game and used it for the advertisement for the show that night. And then the show goes live, and we didn't mention it once. I mean, it was like a picture of us at the baseball game was the promo. It was like,
That's where I got the idea about having a format. I think we're just a little too loosely wound around here.
loosely wound. Oh, man. All right, leaving song time. I don't know if I played this recently on the show, but we've done a lot of work during the daily practice trying to come up with a definitive version of it. So let's see what happens here. He died at 29 at the end of a bottle. So in so few years, he wrote all those songs. Many might say that's not how you ought to live your life, but damn those songs. And watching the fire still burn, when will I ever learn? That don't mean I have to get higher. I don't have to set me on fire. This doesn't have to go down to the wire. Doesn't have to go down. She died at 33, OD'd in a hotel, that famous hotel where genius would hang. She was always free, now she always will be. Was anyone freer than when she sang? And watching the fire still burn, when will I ever learn? That don't mean I have to get higher. I don't have to set me on fire. This doesn't have to go down to the wire. Doesn't have to go down. He died at 75, always a fighter, screaming at demons like a back alley cat. He teased the reaper, I dare you to try it. I'll shave with your scythe, wipe my face with your hat. And watching the fire still burn, when will I ever learn? That don't mean I have to get higher. I don't have to set me on fire. This doesn't have to go down to the wire. Doesn't have to go down.
Wow.
Still don't know what to do in the solo section yet, but we're working on that. We'll figure it out.
Man, I'm gonna tell you something before we leave. I have very few reasons for y'all to be jealous of me, but me sitting here listening to this every Thursday, you all should be very jealous of me. This is great. I love it.
Oh, thank you, dude. Love you all. Thank you so much. Till next time, Jabber Jawn signing off.
Carry on.
Very fun. Good to be back. Good to have Lex back.
Yeah,
Lex. Good job. Yay. That was fun.
Oh, that was a fun one. I like
drunk
that.
off that sip of moonshine. Let's go find some trouble.
Wow. God, that is so
Well, we can't find the car, I'll drive.
There you go. Dad could